Good afternoon. I'm Mindy Wright, member of the CMC Board of Trustees, and I'm Senior Outreach Coordinator at Ohio State. I'm happy to see you all here and awake, even if a little bit groggy. Today, I would imagine we are all grateful to bring an end to the 2016 general election. I know we are grateful for our political season sponsors, Hannah News Service and Ohio Farm Bureau Federation. Please help me thank them and their friends and associates. We are now closing the book on a long and unusual election cycle, one that has often reflected some of our worst fears and prejudices, one that has shown too many examples of division and too few of civil discourse. But we can all rest assured that the Columbus Metropolitan Club is surviving and thriving at a time when it is important that civil conversation and dialogue prevail. Whether you are Black, white, Latino, or Asian, immigrant or native-born, Boomer or millennial, Democrat, Republican, or independent, Muslim, Christian, or Jewish, whether you're female, male, or trans, gay, or straight, in the end, we must find a way to come together in what has always been the work of America to create a more perfect union. So let's ask our esteemed panel to help us sort through the rubble, learn what we might piece back together, what we can learn from the battle, and how we can move on as a stronger, more informed nation facing the challenges ahead. Please welcome Bureau Chief of the Ohio Statehouse News Bureau, Karen Kasler, Political Science Professor Emeritus, The Ohio State University, Paul A. Beck, President and CEO of New Visions Group, Derek Clay, reporter at the Columbus Dispatch, Dale Rowland, and our host, Chief Content Director, News and Public Affairs at WOSU Public Media, Mike Thompson.
Thanks, Mindy. Thank you all for coming. I know it was likely a very long night and early morning for all of you, I'm sure, whether you went to bed at 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning. Thank you all for coming here, and we'll try to make sense of this a little. I came very well prepared. How many are familiar with the public radio show Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me? Okay, it's a satirical quiz show on NPR. We air it on Saturdays at 11. Well, I have the Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me go bag. In case you are unsatisfied with yesterday's election, this is what you need to either go to Canada or to Mexico. So let me tell you what's in here. This is equipped with public radio. You have to have a mug. So you can keep your hot chocolate warm if you go to Canada, your lemonade cool if you go to Mexico, and it has a handy compass on the back in case you get lost. Other things inside this bag. We have stickers for your car, so you look like a native. Mexican, Canada. Okay, there you go. What else do we have in here? We have coupons. Coupons for a Mexican shirt if you go south, and long underwear if you go north. Free coupons. Just show at your nearest retailer. And my favorite is, I need my glasses for this, handy phrases for NPR listeners moving to Mexico on one side, and handy phrases for NPR listeners going to Canada on the other. Good morning. Buenos dias. Is this a real country? Is this a real country, eh? Excuse me, where is the Whole Foods? Excuse me, where is the Whole Foods, eh? La salsa es libre de gluten. Is the salsa gluten-free? So, I'm taking bids on this. I have to keep it away from my daughter, who is threatening to go to one of those two fine countries this morning, but a little levity to try to break the ice today. It's been quite a ride, quite a night. I'm going to ask our most seasoned of our panelists the very simple question, what the hell happened? Paul Beck.
How the hell would I know? Let me just say a couple of things. One, it was a stunning result. I don't think either Donald Trump nor Hillary Clinton nor anybody else really expected what happened yesterday. There may be, if you think back to the beginning of this long, long campaign, I mean, we're talking about, 18 months or thereabouts, there were three fundamentals, it seems to me. Political scientists look for these kinds of things in trying to anticipate what's going to happen. One fundamental was we began as a 50-50 nation, divided about in half with presidential results that were about 50-50 or close to it in previous elections. What we had yesterday, at least at latest report, was a number of battleground states that barely tipped in one direction or another, and a popular vote result that, at least at last counting, showed Hillary Clinton in the lead nationwide. So we were a 50-50 nation starting out, and we've kind of ended up there, it seems to me. A little bit of a tilt to the Republican side this time, but still 50-50. Secondly, we are, at least among partisans, who are probably 80% of the electorate, deeply, deeply polarized. More polarized as a result of this election campaign, I think, than we were before, but we were very deeply polarized before. What this means is Republicans vote for Republicans, no matter who they are. Democrats vote for Democrats, no matter who they are. Republicans and Democrats see the world through very different lenses when it comes to matters of fact and when it comes to other evaluations as well. So that's a reality also, and we started the year with that reality. And then thirdly, if you look at the Gallup poll, beginning really all the way back in 1978 and 79, there were 4 times when dissatisfaction with the way things were in the country reached a low point. One was when Ronald Reagan defeated Jimmy Carter for president in 1980. The second one was when George Herbert Walker Bush lost the White House to Bill Clinton in 1992. The third was when Barack Obama was able to defeat John McCain in 2008. And then the fourth was this year. 29% of Americans thought they were satisfied with the way things were. 71% were not. And so this meant that there was this powerful headwind against the establishment. And we saw this with the Clinton difficulties in the Democratic primaries. We certainly saw this with the Trump victories over establishment figures in the Republican primaries and caucuses. And we saw this as Trump continued to campaign as a change agent, opposed to not only the Democratic establishment, but the establishment of his own party. And I think in those 3 things lies the story of this very surprising election result. And I would almost have you dial back to that time 12 to 18 months ago when these 3 things were the fundamentals that began the campaign.
Dirk, I was watching last night and said, we've been here before. This was very similar to 2000. The difference, 2 big differences. Tim Russert did not have his whiteboard last night, and that we did have a resolution at the end of the night last night. But you ran Al Gore's campaign here in Ohio in 2000. What were you thinking last night watching the returns, and did it bring back memories of Al Gore, George W. Bush in 2000?
It absolutely brought back memories. I was sharing a story with you, Mike, before we got started as to, when election night was happening in 2000, and, we had an election night party at one of the local hotels, and all of the media was gathered, and they were interviewing me about, the effort in Ohio. And when Florida went for Bush, then all the news media left our party and went to the Republican Party. And I remember having that same exact feeling as I did last night as we saw some of the election results come in in regards to the Clinton and Trump race. There was just an overarching just sigh of, almost disgust, at some point at the election party. And so people were really feeling emotional about this race. And I think that as I look back at the result that we have this morning, there are a few observations that I just see is that, one, polls are not reliable. For the good majority of this campaign, Clinton had been leading in the polls nationally on a consistent basis. And we clearly saw last night that was not the case. And I think, as you pointed out, Mike, there was only one poll that had consistently had Trump winning, and that was the LA Times poll.
And that poll was mocked. I remember watching the World Series, and one tweet said the Indians won the World Series according to the LA Times poll. that poll was mocked throughout the thing, and it turns out that they were correct.
Absolutely.
They're the new 538. Neil Houston.
Right. And then, the other observation that that I have is the ground game is not all that it's cracked up to be. The Democrats traditionally has had the best ground game in terms of getting out the vote, making sure that folks are well communicated about when Election Day is, who the candidates are, what the issues are. But we saw in this election that, in my neighborhood alone, I probably got 10 to 12 touches from the campaign, whether it be, door knockers or direct mail or people coming to the door asking me who I'm going to vote for. So ground game is not as important as it used to be. If you have the money, well, first of all, you got to have a message that resonates with people, and is whether you agree with the message that Trump put out or not, his message resonated with people.
How much of a fact that Trump was a celebrity candidate, had huge name recognition, did that nullify the ground game in addition to his message, which resonated with people? I mean, he was at an advantage there that, say, Mitt Romney wasn't or John McCain wasn't.
Well, he had the money first and foremost to self-fund his campaign if he wanted to. Now, he got donations from people all across the country, but his celebrity definitely helped him in the fact that people knew who he was. So he had an advantage in that right going into the election of people knowing him from his notoriety.
Darrell, the good news last night for Ohio is that we're still a bellwether. We were, the New York Times wrote us off that we're not going to be able to predict the presidential winner. Well, we did it easily, right? So as Ohio goes, so goes the nation, right? What happened in Ohio, Darrell?
One of the most incredible things I've ever witnessed, quite frankly, and Ohio has seen amazing campaigns. Starting in 2000, the one Derek was heavily involved in, with Gore sort of scaling back there at the end, there was a lot of, and probably this gentleman as much as anyone asking, well, what if he'd stayed in Ohio? We may not have been worried about Florida for however long it was, a few weeks. The campaign of George W. Bush in 2004, put together, by the way, by Bob Paduchik, who was Trump's campaign manager this time around in the state, was just amazing. Then Obama came along with all his analytics in 2008 and blew that away. And now Trump. So we're the day after election. This is when the standard navel-gazing begins, and we try to assess all these, are these going to be grand trends or whatever. I just wonder if this is a one-off. I don't think I think first and foremost, the interpretation of this election is just the totally dominating personality of Donald Trump. And we could talk about, his issues, his message did resonate with a lot of Ohioans. And you look at where the strongest gains were. They were in counties like Lorain and the Mahoning Valley, places like that, with a lot of blue-collar folks struggling to make ends meet now. So we're the bellwether, and the state that was number 2, New Mexico, went for Clinton, so we put some distance there. And I think Illinois is 3. That's a Clinton state. So the king is dead, long live the king. I do have to say, it's time for a commercial?
Absolutely.
All right. Those of you who get the paper at home, you probably got this one, still no decision. What could I say? We waited an hour. Those darn networks just wouldn't call it. So, however, for a mere couple dollars, you can come downtown and get the new reality. So, and obviously that'll, that's story and everything, and more analysis will be tomorrow. But this is, the role of the media in this whole thing. We had folks who are on our Facebook page right now saying, we're against Trump because we didn't have a newspaper reflecting his victory, even though, it didn't happen till 3 this morning.
Carol, why did we all get it wrong? We were watching these polls, and the pollsters will say, with some degree of validity, that, the polls were within the margins of error in each state that Trump won. So statisticians will say, we weren't wrong. We weren't right, but we weren't wrong.
It's great to be able to split it
The
like that, right?
statisticians and politicians, the same type of thing. How did we miss it?
I saw a tweet this morning that was pretty funny. A woman tweeted out that she was looking forward to people who couldn't predict the results of this election explaining the results of this election. So I don't know why people are asking us that in a way, because I don't know what happened, and I rely on people like Dr. Beck to tell me. I think, but when I look back through, when I was doing some research before I came down here, looking back through some old headlines, there were headlines like the Washington Post had a headline that said, Trump has no path to the presidency. I mean, there were headlines like that. And so it seemed universal that Hillary Clinton was almost guaranteed this. And so I think that was what a lot of us operated on. And certainly there were those who must have known. I mean, I'd love to see the insider polling, the campaign polling, because that tends to be pretty accurate. I'd love to know if they knew what apparently we didn't know. And, on the whole idea of bellwether, I mean, you could start to see some signs as you were watching the data come in last night. We have, of the 10 bellwether counties in Ohio, the top 10, only one of them went to Clinton. That was Hamilton County, because Hamilton County has gotten more and more Democratic over time. The rest of them all went to Trump. Ottawa County picked the winner since 1948, and that record is still strong. When you start to watch the results come in too, Obama, when he won in 2012, won 17 counties in Ohio. Hillary Clinton won 7. So that really gives you an indication that the turnout, we were talking about early voting turnout being at record levels in some counties, it wasn't enough in some areas to put her over the top. She came into Election Day with maybe a 7 or 8 point lead, and Trump won Election Day and won the state.
Let me ask a question. It's a multiple choice question. You can't say all or none of the above. You have to make a decision. Who gets the most credit/blame? A, Jim Comey. B, Vladimir Putin. C, Hillary Clinton. Or D, Donald Trump?
Is that me?
Sure.
Oh, jeez. Well, I have a two-part answer, I guess. And I guess I would look at it as, the victory definitely goes to the Republicans and Donald Trump. There's a victory there that they deserve to have. But there's also the loss definitely goes to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. Because, again, when you look at the turnout just didn't come out like it did for Barack Obama. She was way behind in Ohio when you start talking about the actual numbers of Democrats who turned out to vote for her. And like Darrell was saying, the gains that Trump had on the Romney counties that he won, that he built on Romney's wins to get a pretty good margin going in.
Paul, I mean, I haven't heard much of it this morning because I think it's sort of like, almost like a funeral where pundits don't want to leap on the person who has met their demise. But Hillary Clinton was a lousy candidate. I think her unfavorables, here's the objective. Her unfavorables were really high, above 50%. Blame James Comey if you want, but the email server was her own doing. She didn't put it to rest early on, which she should have done. At the end, the last 2 weeks of the campaign, she was trying to go for the blowout. I heard this morning she did not make one stop in Wisconsin the entire general campaign. Did the Democrats choose the wrong candidate?
She didn't prove to be a strong candidate in 2008 either. And maybe this year there was not much of a Democratic bench to choose from. I think she made mistakes. The email server obviously was a serious mistake. But the other thing I would say, my pick in the multiple choice question would be Donald Trump. I think we continued to underestimate Donald Trump and the kind of appeal that he had, particularly to white working class Americans.
But if he had a candidate who had favorability ratings above 50%, say 55%, a Joe Biden, would he have won? It's a binary choice, the phrase we kept hearing all this campaign.
I thought at the beginning, and this goes back to the fundamentals, that this was a year that should be a Republican win. And maybe Joe Biden would have run a different campaign and a better campaign than Hillary Clinton, but Joe Biden would have also been attacked and weakened, I think, over the course of the campaign by a very effective Republican assault on a candidate they thought they had to destroy to be able to win this election with Donald Trump as the nominee, and they pretty effectively did that.
Derek, you want to weigh in?
Absolutely. You know, to answer your multiple choice question, I put it on the Clinton campaign. Only in the fact that, as Dr. Beck said, I think that everyone did not take Donald Trump seriously. And we concentrated more so on the emotion of the nasty things and the nasty things that he's done over the course of the campaign and his lifetime, to be quite honest, some of the things that have been brought to light. So it was an emotional vote for a lot of people. And that's what the campaign ran on. They tried to play on people's emotions versus putting, you know, she had issues, but the issues were outshadowed by the emotionalism of some of her ads. Whereas you had a Donald Trump, you knew exactly where you stood, whether you liked it or not. You knew he was going to build a wall. Whether that wall is going to get built or not, we'll see. He wanted to abolish Obamacare, and he wanted to do immigration reform. Those are the three things, and all of those culminated into Make America Great Again. So I go back to the message was very succinct, and people understood it, whether you liked it or not. You understood it. Whereas, you know, on our side of the aisle, stronger together, that can mean a number of different things. So that's the reason why I put it on our campaign.
Daryl, I've said a few times that Trump supporters were hearing Donald Trump's voice, but they weren't really listening to him. They heard his anger. They heard his Make America Great. They did hear that, but they didn't care about the specifics. They didn't listen closely to the specifics. They were just fed up and frustrated by the system that we have, and that's why he resonated so well with them. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's what happened?
Absolutely. Yeah, been to Trump rallies over this state, and a couple out of state as well. And interviewing people, first of all, some folks may think, these are all just a bunch of ignorant regnuts. They're not. And, we're talking about a majority of the electorate here, or close to it. So, but they, okay, yeah, he shouldn't have said that about women. Yeah, he gets these facts messed up. Yeah, this, yeah, this. They'll concede all that because they want so badly for there to be change. And this guy, they believe, really will change. Now, it may not be the change we all want, but they're so tired of sending the message to Washington, we need change, we want things to be different, that this guy may nuke him, but by golly, he's going to give us the change. So I'm voting for him.
But I'd like to add in there, what's interesting is the number of members of Congress who were reelected. I mean, all 16 of our members of Congress were reelected, and Rob Portman was reelected. So this idea that Washington needs to change, well, apparently it needs to change at the presidential level, but not necessarily at the congressional level.
It's not my
It's not my guy, it's everybody else.
It's everybody else.
And, another thing that I'll add, too, is that people are just sick and tired of infighting amongst political parties. And you clearly saw that through this vote, people wanted to change. People want progress. Whatever that progress is, they want progress, and they don't want to see the infighting that's happening in Washington. And I would even say here at a local level within the state of Ohio as well. So, the country is deeply divided. I think Trump has a real opportunity to heal our nation or begin that path with his rhetoric and tone in the first 100 days. For anyone that does not think that we have deep racial problems in this country, you're just blind. I mean, we have a problem, and we have to fix this problem, because if we don't fix this problem, it's going to be the demise of our democracy.
Paul, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there are two puzzles, or at least two puzzles, that come out of this election for me. One of them is something that Karen pointed to, and that is that in an anti-establishment year, Republican incumbents did quite well across the country. And so the focus is not on the Congress, and that in a way is understandable. We're a country that pays attention to the presidency much more than we do to the Congress. The other puzzle going forward is now that the Republicans will control both of the popular branches of government, how will they govern? Will they govern on Trump's agenda? Will they govern on their own agenda? How will they merge the two? I don't pretend to know what's going to happen as a result of that. And it'll be something, I think, for all of us to watch, and probably most of the politicians in Washington are puzzled by that as well.
Did you get
Republican and Democratic side?
Did you get some inside information on the specifics of Trump's agenda that we should know about? Or we know he wants to make a great America great again, and things are going to be great. We're going to beat ISIS, and we're going to bring all those Apple. I heard a quote today. Apple's going to make those damn computers here in America.
Well, I think there are actually several things on which he was very clear and is clearly in disagreement with his own party in Congress. One of them is free trade. And I really expect him to take steps to, certainly TPP is dead, right? That's not going to happen. Even though there was a group of Republicans, probably a majority of them, who wanted it to happen, but that's not going to happen. Will he renegotiate some of these trade agreements? Quite possibly. The president, by the way, has the power given to him by the Congress to simply abrogate any trade agreement that we have right now. And he, I think, will do some of that. Secondly, there are areas that have to do with immigration where I think many Republicans in Congress were ready to come to some kind of solution. He's not going to go in that direction because I think his base would be so furious with him if he did anything that offered some kind of a path to citizenship, for example. And then the third area, which is a really interesting area, is that he, in talking at his rallies and in laying out his own policy proposals, said, I am going to protect entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Social Security and Medicaid are particularly important to his base. They are part of the Republican agenda in Congress, but that agenda basically wants to reform those entitlement programs by lowering spending on them. And we'll see how that works out over time.
I want to get back to the race issue that Derek was mentioning. You know, for all the talk of the country changing and becoming more diverse, and we saw the Latino vote totals in places like Florida and other states, and we've heard complaints that Republicans are relying too much on the white vote. Well, the white vote had a very good night last night. That's what won the election for Donald Trump. What happened? Were we wrong in that the country is becoming more diverse and that's going to guide our elections? What do you think is going on there?
You know, I think that, again, I think people are sick and tired of political rhetoric and no action. I think that's what boiled down to the vote that you got last night. When people are losing their jobs and they have to provide for their family, and you know we're shipping jobs across overseas, then you're only going to take so much of that before you start looking to make a change. Now, I do think that there are some deep-seated racial issues that we as a country just have to face and talk about.
Was this payback among some in the country for the first African-American president? I heard that on NPR this morning.
I think there's some of that, absolutely.
Daryl, one of the lessons we learned, well, we in the media are going to learn a lot of lessons, I think, that we can't treat groups of voters, we've learned this lesson over and over again, we can't treat groups of voters as a monolith. Donald Trump got 29% of the Hispanic vote, and more than Mitt Romney did. So we have to look deeply into the motivations of people, no matter whether male, female, what heritage, what race they are.
Yeah, and that's certainly a failing of the media. You know, we try to make things easy. We label groups. I sometimes half seriously talk about with my colleagues. You know, it's like political science is almost like the last place you're allowed to be racist, because you talk about these entire groups of people in overly generalized terms, as if, you know, in other areas of discourse we've gotten away from that. So I think maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to do that in politics too. Having said that, I think just from the numbers in Ohio, in Cuyahoga County in particular, that the African-American voter did not view Hillary Clinton as his or her champion. Now, no one expected her to match the vote totals of the first African-American president in 2008, 2012. So there's going to be some fall-off, but I think it was dramatic fall-off. There's a reason Hillary Clinton was in Cuyahoga County twice in the final 3 days of the campaign. And, with some of the biggest African-American superstars, known to this country, with Jay-Z and Beyonce and LeBron, and even for us old people, Jim Brown was out there on Saturday too. So still the best NFL player ever, by the way. So I think, there's underperformance on the other side as well. She, for whatever reason, she just didn't light the spark. My colleague Kathy Kandinsky, we did a series of stories on Ohio's different regions. She went to Cuyahoga County in mid-September, and it's the first I'd ever seen a reporter. She talked to lots of African-American leaders, pastors, in the black church community, and not that they were voting for Trump, but it's like, I don't know about Hillary, sort of, and there was a lot of that, and I'm not sure she ever moved the needle that much on that.
Karen, gender, she came very close. Well, she's won the popular vote, at least as of right now, to becoming the first woman elected president. But you didn't sense until yesterday, I really didn't sense a whole lot of excitement about that. Yesterday we saw the Facebook Live of putting the I Vote stickers on Susan B. Anthony's gravestone, and we saw a lot of women wearing pantsuits. And
There was a whole group called Pantsuit Nation on Facebook.
So it was like really the first time in the campaign that I saw the same sort of spirit that Barack Obama had in 2008 among African-American voters. Why do you think that was? And again, we can't paint women as a monolith
that's a big
saying
part of it.
that they're all going to vote for Hillary because she's a woman.
Right, because I think you've got breakouts of, college-educated women. You've got evangelicals. I mean, evangelicals broke for Donald Trump big time. And so women who are in that group certainly would have voted for Donald Trump. I think some of it was, it felt sometime like this whole idea of the stickers on the gravesite, which apparently happens every 4 years, but this year.
Okay. Yeah.
And this year, obviously, it had a different level of significance. Was it too little too late for people who wanted to get women excited about the first woman president? There was a lot of conversation I heard in the last couple of weeks about how people weren't talking about Hillary Clinton as being the first woman candidate for president anymore. That was kind of old news. And so it almost kind of cycled back in, but by that point, I think a lot of people had made up their minds. That was one of the things that I had seen in the exit polls that were done yesterday. A lot of people made up their minds in September. So some of these things that happened, these October and November surprises, didn't have a whole lot of effect on people who'd already made up their minds. And, I know Donald Trump was saying in Wisconsin that people could go and change their vote, which apparently in Wisconsin you can change your vote 3 times, which I can't even imagine. If you have to change your vote 3 times, maybe you shouldn't be early voting. Just saying. Now, you can't change your vote. You couldn't change your early vote in Ohio, just for the record.
You can't change it now.
No. There's no changing now. It's done. Yeah.
Donald Trump, Paul Beck last night gave a very, typically gracious victory speech, praised Hillary Clinton as a fighter and her service to the country. But he was reading from the teleprompter. He wasn't tweeting. Apparently, they may have taken his Twitter away from him. I don't know. But how long does this last? He's a 70-something-year-old man. His personality is well-formed. Is he really going to be this statesman now?
Well, I think it's easy to be gracious when you win. The question, I think, will be not how does he treat Clinton, because Clinton now is history. It's how is he going to deal with people actually on his own side, Republicans in the Congress, the Paul Ryans, the John Kasichs and Rob Portman who didn't support him during the campaign. It'll be really interesting to see which Donald Trump emerges. Is it going to be the Donald Trump who tries to appeal broadly to Americans? Is it going to be the vindictive Donald Trump who remembers who his enemies and friends were? I don't, again, know what the answer to that is. And we've seen, I think, all these different Donald Trumps.
Darrell, you've covered him quite a bit. What do you think will happen when he's speaking off the cuff?
It's hard to see the leopard changing spots. And that's as Derek and others have mentioned, he certainly does have an opportunity. I think the 3 a.m. speech today was fairly gracious. When you say typical, it's typical of a winner's speech, but no speech by Donald Trump's been typical, or very few anyhow. So,
Well, it was atypical for him.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, but don't forget, he threatened after the election, he's going to get those women who came forward. He's going to file suits or anything. I mean, is it really going to be we're going to have a president-elect of this country pursuing litigation against some of his accusers?
He promised a special prosecutor.
Promised a special prosecutor. Said Hillary should be in jail. He's going to go after her. Deserved or not, that's certainly not the route to healing in this country, I don't think. I mean, you would just want to keep ripping off the scab and keeping the divisions here. That will do it. So we'll see.
What happens, Karen, if he doesn't fulfill some of these promises? The special prosecutor, the big one is the wall. Most people agree that it's going to be impossible to build it. It's certainly going to be impossible for Mexico paying for it. What happens when those things don't happen?
Well, he's been talking about the wall since he rode that golden escalator down, right? And he didn't mention it last night, which I thought was very interesting in his acceptance speech. He did not mention it. I think the whole idea of having to work now with a Congress that is Republican, but there are members of that Congress who actively did not support him. I mean, Rob Portman wrote in Mike Pence's name. There's Paul Ryan, the House Speaker, today finally came out and I think said Donald Trump's name for the first time in
2
quite a
days
long
ago,
time.
Ryan said he would vote for him. Like Portman.
But there's definitely tension there. There's been tension there for a while. So as he has to work with this Republican House and Senate, is he going to be able to get all of these agenda items done that he wants to get done? And exactly that. What if he doesn't? The people who drove him to the White House are going to be very mad if he doesn't get done what they wanted to see him do when he got there. And so that potentially means, I mean, where are we going to be in 4 years? I know no one wants to think about that now, and I'm sorry to bring it up. But where are we going to be in 4 years? Everybody kept saying that the 2020 campaign starts today, and good God, I hope that's not true. Because I think we all need a little bit of a vacation, a little bit of a break.
John Casey did cancel a speech in Washington, at least.
And there's somebody that I think was really looking forward to 2020. We were all thinking that he was going to be right out there in front, and now, what's going to happen to him and some of the other folks who did not endorse Donald Trump? What now?
We'll take questions from the audience. We have a microphone over there, so if you want to start lining up. Paul, you wanted to add to this?
I just wanted to add that there's a budget question. Congress has been very much concerned, Republicans at least in Congress, in cutting the federal budget, trying to cut the debt. The Trump proposals are budget busters. And it'll really be interesting to see how the Republicans in Congress, and particularly Paul Ryan, who's a budget guy, and the Trump administration resolve that going forward.
Yeah, I think that President-elect Trump has put himself in a very peculiar position. You know, he's promised the world on the campaign trail, and now he has to deliver. And there's a constituency out there that expects him to deliver. And if he doesn't deliver, he could potentially be a one-term president.
How is that different than other presidential candidates who perhaps more subtly promise the world and don't deliver?
Right.
Well, I hear Trump, like down in Wilmington, which of course lost, the big DHL plant several years ago. He says, we're going to bring your jobs back. He's in Youngstown saying we're going to bring your jobs back. Now, whether he's specifically talking about DHL, the steel plants, I don't know. But if there's going to be a revolt against Donald Trump in the near future, it's going to be that feeling of betrayal. If that doesn't happen now, I think. Now, and if he starts blaming whatever or whomever, I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting.
Okay, go ahead. Please, ground rules, please state your name when you come to the microphone. We are on television, so be aware of that. And please, no long speeches. Get to your question or your statement really quickly. Go ahead.
Lori Evermeyer, a lifetime member of Columbus Metropolitan Club. Please become one. Little plug. My daughter teaches for Teach for America in Cleveland at a charter school. 97% low income, 98% minority. These kids have been watching and following the election. Fourth graders, following the election, heard our now elected president. Racial slurs, slurs against women, horrible vitriol. She sent me a text this morning, Mom, what do I tell my kids? What's your advice?
I'll take that.
Turn the other cheek? I don't know.
You know, I think education has to start at home. And, you know, as parents or as teachers or employers, we have to do our own part to educate our kids about what's right and what's not right. And so if we do our part, then we shouldn't have to rely on other folks to do that for us.
I spent the morning doing interviews with our friends to the north who, the Canadians noted these were radio talk show hosts who wanted to talk about the election. And
Were you interviewing for a job? Is that what you were doing?
One of them noted that
She's gonna need that kit, I think.
the Canadian immigration site crashed last night at some point, just so you know that. But they were asking actually basically the same question. What do you tell, what do you tell the world? What does America tell the world when this is the candidate that you elected who said these things, and now he's a global player? Now he's going to be on the global stage. What do you say? And I don't have an answer.
Paul, this may be, is there a leader, a global leader who we can compare to Donald Trump? I'm thinking Silvio Berlusconi in Italy, somebody like that. Have we been down this road before? Not us, but others.
Well, I think the one that comes immediately to mind is the current president of the Philippines. In terms of vitriol, it's Trump-like. He's gone well beyond Trump. He actually has murdered or ordered the murder of people. So he's far worse in that sense. Berlusconi, I think, is different in a way. Some of the similarities to Trump. I think in my lifetime, and when I used to say that wasn't very long, but now it's pretty long, actually. In my lifetime, I've never seen a candidate whose rhetoric was as divisive and negative as Trump's. Now, having said that, the Clinton campaign also engaged, not in that kind of rhetoric necessarily, but very negative attacks on their opponent. And so this whole campaign has been full of negativity. And that's rather disturbing. It's rather disturbing, I think, for young people who look at this. I haven't seen the exit polls yet on the votes of so-called millennials, 18 to 34 years of age, but the earlier polls were showing them not very enthusiastic about Clinton, very negative about Trump, overwhelmingly in favor of Clinton, though not enthusiastically so. And we could be seeing a very deep generational divide in our politics, which has implications for the future, by the way. Now, 4 years from now, there's another presidential election. That's a long way away. We don't really know what's going to happen between now and then. But you can create generations in politics by the particular election. And those generations, you think of the Roosevelt generations from the New Deal, those generations work their way through the electorate. They live on. They really change the nature of politics. And that may well occur. Part of it may be a result of the kind of divisive rhetoric we've heard.
Go ahead, sir.
Charlie Warner. You asked the question about whether there was a Comey effect, and I never heard an answer. And it was my impression that what happened 2 weeks ago took away the attention from Trump's sexist remarks and everything else on that film, and suddenly focused negatively on Hillary and brought back the whole email issue. And what effect did that have on the outcome?
Karen or Daryl? Daryl, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, well, that clearly, you're right. That changed the agenda of the campaign. That changed the whole discussion. And, when then, of course, Director Comey came out and said, well, never mind, just a couple of days before the election, we wondered, had the damage been done? And, you look at these states with very close results, and that's one question you've got to ask. But I think more influential, again, as I look back on things, was Hillary Clinton's statement about the basket of deplorables. You go to Trump rallies, and there's probably 1 in 15, maybe 1 in 10, has some sort of apparel or sign or whatever referring to, I'm a deplorable, or I'm this, I'm that. It's a little like Mitt Romney's remark, 4 years ago, albeit made in private, about the 47% of America. It just seemed to crystallize for those inclined to believe Mr. Trump that, yeah, there really is this elite that's just totally out of touch. So I'm not going to smash the glass ceiling. I'm going to go for the guy who's going to blow up the building.
I would also add, this is my 30th straight hour up, and I don't say that for sympathy. I say that because in case I say something really stupid, you'll blame it on that and not thinking I'm an idiot. But so there was an article from Politico that came out this morning kind of rehashing what some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that was going on in the campaign. And one of the things that was said was that Hillary Clinton, back to the idea of being a bad candidate, that she had her negatives kind of baked in. Everybody knew the negatives about her. And I think the email server issue, as it kept coming back again and again, it kept reminding people of this negative perception that people had from the very beginning. It didn't have to get introduced over and over. People kept having that idea out there. And so I think it really played a role.
It suppresses enthusiasm, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let me just add to that, that sometimes the effect of these various events is important because it reinforces people's impressions of a candidate. And I think the various Comey letters did that. Psychologists, by the way, talk about a concept called priming. And priming is getting people to think about something. And I think even though Comey backed off with the most recent letter, he led voters to think again about the thing that was the most damaging to Hillary Clinton, and that was the email server.
I'm Carol Looper, and I have two quick Hillary Clinton questions. First, was there sexism in that when push comes to shove, some people could not go into that polling place and vote for a woman? And secondly, what could Hillary Clinton, besides not getting involved in the servers, what could Hillary Clinton have done differently?
Darryl?
Well, I can't read minds, but my assumption is, yes, there's absolute sexism. I mean, we heard President Obama just, a week ago, a little over a week ago now, up at Capital University, talk about that as a major motivation against her. To what degree is the question? But there's no question that was a factor. And number two, what could she have done? I mean, assuming, right, that the server issue was there, come clean. You look at, I thought one of the more devastating commercials, and it didn't really get that much play or attention, was the one of the Trump super PACs one that just showed Comey before Congress testifying about whether she was truthful or not. And she was not. And I apologize to Clinton supporters here, but that's just a simple fact. We write a lot and call Trump out on lying in his speeches, and last night or this morning was one of the first ones. There wasn't one or many, but she had that issue as well. So that's, my gosh, Carol, how many times have we in the media seen this where someone just keeps kind of trying to do the half? What is it, the Nixonian phrase, the modified limited hangout or whatever? It didn't work then. I don't think it's going to work now. Yeah, I'm an old guy. Sorry.
Derek, you're a strategist. How about from a campaign strategy, what could she have done differently? We mentioned she hadn't visited Wisconsin in 5 months, and she lost it.
Absolutely. I think that she could have taken some of the emotionalism, as I said before, out of the campaign and stuck strictly to the facts and what people of the American public wanted to hear. How are you going to help me? How are you going to make sure that I have a job, if I'm living in the Rust Belt? How are you going to make sure that my kids can go to college? And all of the things that everybody has been thinking about, but Trump made it very clear as to how he was going to get there. And the Clinton campaign, again, tried to play on people's emotions about the things that they've heard.
And you're talking about the ads, because she talked about all this stuff on the stump.
Yes,
but the
yes,
ads
I'm talking about the ads.
Were almost completely negative.
Yes.
She never said what she was for in the ads.
And it was a gamble. I think it was a good gamble, but it came up short.
Jane Scott, we all have tended to judge Donald Trump as a politician. He's not a politician, he's an actor. how much of what we've seen to date is acting? And is that potentially going to change how he becomes as a president and he begins truly to act like a president now that he's caught this bus?
I think he's a politician now. He won.
Well, I would add, too, I think he proved to be an excellent politician. And, having been an actor may have helped him with that. But he really, and we underestimated him. He's a really able politician on a national stage, certainly in his use of the media, but in other ways as well. And again, we sold him short.
While claiming he wasn't a politician.
I would not.
He was a populist that we have not seen in a long time.
Right. I would not characterize him as an actor at all. I think that he was he's a businessman. I think what you saw in him is what you got. And of course, when he's on his shows like Celebrity Apprentice and all that type of stuff, there's a script and there's plots that they script out for him. But I think when he was on the campaign stump, I think that was 100% genuine Donald Trump.
And that was part of his appeal.
I just wanted to add that we have a history in this country of populist politicians like Trump. And in each case, going all the way back to as much as 200 years ago, the populists have proven to be disappointments to their supporters because once they get in office, they behave like the establishment. And it'll really be interesting to see if Trump is the businessman in office or somebody who really cares about working class Americans.
Would you put Barack Obama in that category?
I didn't see him as a populist.
But he didn't live up to expectations, though.
He didn't. Part of the reason, I think, was Congress.
I'm sorry.
But I think that he had, as does Trump, a charisma that Hillary Clinton lacked, actually. Maybe that's another factor that needs to be factored into this particular result.
Derek, then we'll get one more question.
Sure. The last point I wanted to make is that keep in mind that, Donald Trump he's an egomaniac. I mean, let's agree upon that, okay? And he also realizes that his legacy is on the line. So it's going to be interesting to see how he takes this presidency to try to right some of the wrongs that he's done in the past, and make sure that his legacy goes out on top.
Okay. Real quickly,
Hi, I'm
please.
Peter McCrae. I know we're really short on time. I wondered if quickly you guys could comment on what happens now to our social agenda. What happens to gay marriage, to abortion, to universal health care, to all the gains that we've had recently. Now what's going to become of all of that?
Well, gay marriage is the law, and the law as determined by the Supreme Court, right? So that's not going to change. I fully expect there to be an assault on Obamacare. The problem is going to be that the Republicans will have to replace it with something. And the question is, what do they replace it with? Trump's talked about that. Ryan has talked about that. They're not on the same page with that, but they may get on the same page. And then they'll have to deal with the repercussions of that. If you shake up the healthcare system again, what do you do with some 20 million people who have insurance who didn't have it before? The many more people who are protected from catastrophic medical conditions. So there are a whole bunch of things that are part of Obamacare that I think Republicans are going to all of a sudden for the first time have to face and try to find a solution to.
We're going to have to leave it there. We've got to get Karen some sleep here.
Not for a while. I got the rest of the day to go.
And we have the Supreme Court, which is still tied, and we have a nomination hanging out there. So we have more fun continues, and we'll talk about it more here on the CMC. But thank you all for coming, and keep the conversation civil. Thank you.
A great and enlightening forum. You can view and share today's forum and all of our forums on CTV Columbus Television, on WOSU and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Let's thank our sponsors, Hannah News Service and Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, and our speakers, Karen Kasler, Paul A. Beck, Derek Clay, Dale Rowland, and Mike Thompson. And thanks to all of you for being here. We hope to see you next week.